It's great to be joined here today by the Rev Dr Pete Phillips, who also works up in Durham. Do you want to share a bit about what you do first and foremost, Pete?
Yeah, so I've got two jobs at the moment. One is running the Centre for Digital Theology at Durham University, where we do research into digital church. And the other is working for Premier Christian Media as their head of digital theology. And I'm kind of in charge of developing lots of videos and a Premier Digital membership scheme around resources for the digital church.
Can you just first of all give us, a picture of what is happening globally with the church and the digital world?
So it's really interesting that the same things seem to be cropping up all over the world. So I was on a big talk with the Bible Graduate School in Singapore last week, and they were talking about the same thing about, do we broadcast or do we focus on community? Is digital church a real church? Is God involved in this thing, or is it just us trying to kind of meet culture? And of course telling them that it's a real thing, and that God really is involved in all of this. But also the shift to discipleship, and lots of people saying that prayer meetings and Bible studies and so on are taking off very, very well. But also the wariness and the weariness of having to produce digital stuff all the time. So you get that picture as well from South Africa, from our friends over there. The problem is also in Africa about data issues, in that data is often something we take for granted, but data is very expensive in Africa. And so the idea that people have to forego their social media fix so that they can actually come to church on Sunday.
And so bring it, I guess, then to the UK kind of context, what have been your kind of key things you've noticed over the last year, some kind of key trends for the church engaging with the digital world over the last kind of maybe year?
The church seems to want to be the BBC and produce these kind of really slick live stream programs that people can just sit back and watch. And I was a bit horrified yesterday by watching some of the bite-sized stuff on BBC, only on the news, but actually seeing kids very passively sitting on these sofas and kind of watching the TV or messing around while they watch the TV. And they saw it as kind of entertainment. They were there to kind of absorb something or take something in rather than actually engage physically and engage in what's happening. And I think the church does that as well, that it kind of provides live stream entertainment which is entertaining to people. What the church really does well, though, is interact and develop community. And it's, how do we do that? How do we do that through live stream? Well, by having lots of people from your church sharing testimonies and sharing their engagement and showing what they're doing, how they're doing exercise, how they're doing social engagement and so on. But it's also about trying to use things like Zoom, like we're using here, so that you can see the other members of your community. One of the churches I attend every Sunday kind of has a live stream in the morning, but then at 6:30 in the evening, we have a kind of charismatic Zoom service, which is great because, somebody leads us in worship and then somebody preaches, somebody shares a testimony, but then people can have words of wisdom or prophecies or scripture to share, and we can go into breakout rooms and to pray for one another. And there's great ways to use digital to create more community.
So what's some of the kind of practical things people can do then, I guess, around creating community rather than just having a broadcast?
So I think you really maximize the use of live stream if you can to get the message out there, but then to invite people back to other things. So perhaps have a live stream, but then have a Zoom coffee meeting afterwards. So people go and get their cup of coffee and then come onto the screen, drink their coffee and, hello, how are you, Andy? It's really good to see you. And how are the kids doing?
So really, I guess, creating almost virtual place for the teas and coffees and the biscuits.
Yeah, that's right. And people kind of say that digital isn't very good because you can't kind of pick up all the nuances of somebody's body language and everything. But you actually see a lot more by Zoom than you do in normal church, because normal church you're kind of looking at the back of somebody's head most of the time. Whereas here, I can see when you're smiling, I can see when you're, responding to what happens. And you can do that in Zoom really well. There's Liz Stocko from Loughborough University shared some stuff on Twitter the other day, a long stream of tweets saying, look, this is good about digital communication. This is good. This is good. This is good. We can really pick up lots of really good stuff. And you can see if somebody's hurting and just say, do you want to chat in a private room? So you can do good pastoral counseling as well and engagement through this.
Brilliant. Now, there are also who I guess who are broadcasting on, who are seeing people who would never normally perhaps come to church or engaging with some of the stuff online. You've done some thinking about how we take them on that journey from watching something online to actually becoming a disciple of Jesus. What does that process look like? What should churches be doing practically at this time?
Yeah, so one of the first things we kind of found we did some research with Savanta Comres at Durham University, polling company, and asked people what they were doing with their online faith-related activities. And the first thing we found was that although our normal attendance at Sunday service is about 4 million, and quite a few, probably a third of those don't come to church anymore. So we've got a big decline in the number of people who are going to church online. But when we get the figures from the whole population, we found out that up to 28% of them were watching online. Okay, so that's over a quarter of the country. And the figures that we kind of bandying around is that church attendance has moved from 4 million to a potential 15.6 million. Okay, 400% increase in church attendance potentially. Now those figures are matched on the same survey by Fund and Christian Aid and so on. So they seem to be pretty good. But the question is, these people often talk about the sofa that we provided behind the back pew, a comfy place where they can attend church in their pajamas if they want to, or however they want to dress, but a safe place where they're not kind of intimidated by having to come into a strange place or a strange building, which they don't know what happened in there. They don't know what we strange Christian people do. And so they can just sit there and watch. And people like, we were talking before about the Exeter Church and other places where, they argued that people will come to them 6 weeks after 6 weeks of coming online, and they then come to a physical church. The Everyday Church in London has the same kind of thing, the same kind of feedback that, people watch online for a while and then come to physical church, where if we ever do physical church at the moment. But the question is, how do we turn these kind of anonymous viewers into disciples? How do we encourage them to engage in, house group stuff and in Bible study and in prayer and also in kind of social engagement? So we were talking yesterday with a group of pioneers about how do we actually do pioneering and engagement with people who are not Christians through this medium? And sometimes we find it hard to hang about in digital places. Are we members of our village or our town or our city's social network groups on Facebook and so on? Are we well known there? Are we engaging? Are we offering support in volunteer movements and so on? But also, are we praying for people and encouraging people to pop into this site or that site to pray? Prayer is one of the big things that's happened over lockdown. Number of people engaging in regular daily prayer seems to have gone through the roof, and prayer meetings are very, very busy, rather than the 6 or 7 people who come out at night to a meeting in the church. Now people are getting 50, 60 people coming and engaging in prayer for the church, and that's going to be great for the church.
Brilliant. So I guess then it's really kind of practically is thinking about how can you be in those online spaces, how can you build those platforms, and also I guess, is it probably just thinking through this process that if somebody is engaging for the first time online, then it's almost to a thought where they're coming from and what you need to put in place to go on that journey with them?
Yeah, that's right. It's doing a whole lot of things, but actually, first of all, in welcoming them in our live stream stuff, saying, it's really good to see you, and not saying, oh, it's really good to see the same old folk here every week or something. So do you welcome people who are there for the first time? Do you provide somewhere where they can contact you? Support at something emails, or an opportunity to speak with a vicar or the pastor or the minister or anybody, your friendly pioneer minister or enabler. Is there the opportunity to talk about the faith with somebody over a cup of coffee? So providing these channels for people to say they want to move beyond the sofa and further into the church, and so because otherwise people aren't going to know that that's available. They'll just absorb it, because if you watch TV, you can never really connect with the social media. So the kind of people, the stars of Strictly Come Dancing. Yeah. The only way you can do is kind of through social media and anything, and so you kind of get this feel that these are untouchable people who appear on the TV, and people may get that idea of the church as well, that we're untouchable, that they can't reach us. So we've got to overemphasize the fact, yes, you can reach us, and here are the channels to do that.
That is really helpful kind of point there. Really, really good. And I guess then as we begin to think now, we're in lockdown now and the kind of months ahead and what will be, what are your views now on, will the church go back to what it used to be, or will hybrid be here to stay, or is digital here to stay? What are your thoughts on some of that?
It was fantastic how the church jumped online in March 2020. It was a phenomenal job of most people jumping online, doing really, really well. Of course, the disabled church has been here for years, decades before we were here. And so kind of there's a lot of learning yet for the mainstream church to talk with the disabled church about and draw some of their skills from them and to engage properly with those who have been online all the time, rather than stamp all around and say, oh, this is now our territory and we're the experts. We're all Johnny come lately, you know, we're doing this kind of flying by the seat of our pants. Into the future, hopefully that we see the kind of impact that we have, the new missional field that we have to engage with people online. If we do have 15.6 potential viewers, let's make the most of that and actually say, here we've broken through into a new mission field. You know, I've kind of reckon it's like, you know, Wesley doing his field preaching in Kingswood, you know, that he became more viral and he went out to the field, although the Anglican Church said, don't do it. Okay, we've got loads of people at the moment saying, you know, don't go into digital, don't go in, just remain in your churches. But we've got decreasing numbers of people who are coming to us. So we need to get out there and go to them. And we need to do this kind of digital because it's a new mission field. Secondly, it's a squared mission field because the people who are younger are digitally engaged. Yep. And so one of our figures for the Durham survey we found was that between 45 and 48% of young adults are tuning into online worship. Okay, almost half of young people in a so-called secularized society are engaging, and more people coming back now and saying that the idea of a secularized youth is a myth. You know, Youth for Christ brought out their research, which said that the young people today are the open generation. Okay, so there's so much potential for us to say digital is our mission field. That's where the young people are. Let's get out there and populate digital with the presence of Christ and see what happens. And if the church decides, no, we don't want to do that, we just want to go back to kind of in-house, in models, you know, that kind of look after the kind of people who are there already, then I think we're going to face the same decline that we faced, you know, that we've already faced in this century and in the end of the last century. So digital is a huge hope for us. I think mixed mode is better. I think we need to say that, you know, physical is really, really good. It's great for getting together. It's great to share with one another. It's good to hug, you know, and so physical is good. And digital is kind of the cream on the cake, as it were. It's the added bonus that we can do. But it may be that because we're so used to physical church, that's why we like it so much. The interesting thing is, will we develop digital church so well that we'll be able to see that also as being core for what we're doing, as, you know, proper church, real church, as it were. And so we have then a mixed mode of hybrid church, which is kind of where what we've really been pushing, where we say that both physical and digital need to work hand in hand in order to share the gospel.
So really interesting there that actually the church declined the last number of years. You feel this almost in these difficult and challenging times, yet actually through it all, there could actually be a good opportunity here for the church to actually rediscover itself and to grow again with the next generation.
Yeah. So it's arranging at the very beginning of the lockdown. We did some research about Google searches, and Google came out and said, you know, prayer's going through the roof. It's really interesting. And, you know, people in Ireland through Gladys Ganiel's work at Belfast were saying there's something going strange here with data provision on Sundays. And the data companies in Ireland are having to increase the bandwidth and everything because so many people watching mass online and so on. So there seemed to be something happening that was beyond the church, something about God in the wild is how I talked about it. And we did some kind of Google Trend surveys, and searches for Sunday service are kind of on this kind of well, get me fingers mixed up here, but a flat lining at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. The really interesting thing was that people were searching for prayer, for God, and for Jesus. Okay. And so people were going beyond the church out to find God in the wild. God was calling them. God was engaging with people, in the wild, wherever he wanted to. God out on mission. And the church is kind of running to catch up. Yeah. Now I love that idea, because that's the missional God that we all believe in, that God does mission, and we have to go and find out where he is and join him in it. But God seems to be engaging with people online. And so that's the place we need to get out there and engage properly with what's happening. And if we can then move those anonymous disciples, anonymous viewers into discipleship, that's the best of all worlds for us, because then they can continue their journey with God.
So as we enter this kind of brave new world, as things begin to kind of, the whole hybrid thing begins to settle, what are some of the kind of common pitfalls that churches can fall down, and how do we kind of not fall down them?
So it's very interesting. I mean, there's much about this book, Hybrid Church, which we delivered with Grove. It's only $3.95. It's a very small book, but I approached five digital people to write this book with me, just to put a kind of snippet of information about what they were doing and so on. All of them came back and showed that their understanding of digital church was not just being digital, was not just being a tech nerd. Okay, so for the Catholic priest in Malta, it was going out and doing rosary talks, doing a pilgrimage into a village. Yep, telling the young people they were coming and to get the old people in the village onto laptops and iPads and so on, so they could see what was happening. They got somebody to film them and put it immediately on YouTube. So you have these two Catholic priests, all in their finery and everything, doing the rosary in the middle of this village, and then all the local community engaging as well in that, and praying the rosary, praying for village, praying for people who are ill in hospital with the disease and so on. And this kind of really engaged way of using digital and physical presence. Jo Cox-Darling in Codsall, she put an easel, a kid's easel, out by her garden gate with badges for NHS workers to wear, or tea bags for people to go and have a rest, or who do you want to bless today, or lots of different things each week, and then started doing labyrinths in the church car park, and then labyrinth communions in the church car park, drive-through communion kind of services. Bryony Taylor, vicar in Chesterfield, near Chesterfield, she created dial-a-phone sermons, so people would listen to her preach that she gave online on a Sunday. And loads of people kept phoning these up multiple times because it's the only human voice they were hearing. Yep.
Yeah.
As they would listen to Bryony's talk. And then she kind of delivers the sermon streets to all the people in the village by printing off the order of service and just sending it around with a link to where it was, and so people knew where to get to. So this kind of sense of, don't just think that you can go online and do an online snazzy service and that's it. You have to use all means possible to get the gospel out there and to get the message out there to connect with people.
Thank you so much, mate. You've written another book called Missio Dei. Do you want to share with that for a second? What's really important?
Yeah, sure. This is our book with SCM. We had a conversation with John Drain and Johnny Baker and Rachel Jordan Wolfe at Durham about 18 months ago, and we've turned that into a book of essays and everything, with foreword and conclusion by me and Jonas. And we started a new course at Spurgeon's College called the MA in Digital Theology. Next week, we've got our first batch of students there starting, which is great. Looking for new students for September, so join us.